Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life, being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. This is where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure election integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life, being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. This is where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure election integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life, being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. This is where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure election integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Welcome, everyone, to another one of our virtual town hall meetings. I'm Dr. Mark Sherwood, your host tonight, and I'm actually going to have a wonderful, awesome, another America and Oklahoma first candidate with me tonight. We are grateful for you to be here. As you know, all of us have been making it around the state, talked to many of you. The feedback we get is absolutely tremendous. It is heartwarming and very encouraging. I was talking to our guest just a few moments ago before I introduced him. We were talking about this movement that is around the state right now of Oklahoma is unsurpassed in its momentum. We're seeing things that we haven't seen before. We're seeing a movement across the state that truly is patriotism. And we can thank the hardships for that. When you have a hard time or a problem, good, hardworking Americans have always used that to propel themselves forward to find new solutions. That's exactly what we're doing right now. And I'm super proud of you, my fellow Oklahomans, and it's been an amazing journey. As I've traveled around the state of Oklahoma, I've gotten to meet some wonderful patriots, and wherever I go, it's an honor to look in the eye, shake your hands, love on you a little bit, and just tell you how much we appreciate you. That said, just a couple things tonight I want to make announcement-wise. As you know, I want you all to understand where we're going to be. Right now, we're streaming live on Facebook. You want to get in there right now and start sharing this thing, because my guest tonight, John Bennett, which I'll introduce in just a moment formally, you'll want to share his name, get it out there. He's actually running for United States Congress District 2, which, again, we'll talk about more in just a few moments. Make sure that you prepare your questions, because I'll be monitoring the questions on Facebook Live. And then about 45 minutes after the hour, so roughly 38 minutes from now, I'll actually turn the questions over and we'll start feeding those into John and I as we answer questions. Make sure that you download our app right here. This is the app Sherwood 2022. It's the way we communicate. All of our events, our town hall meetings, et cetera, and the guests are right here listed for you. It's got a really cool saying up front that people have grown to appreciate. Never bow down to tyrants, defy them. And we've got all of our statements in here and our issues. Super important to understand our issues. You see them right here listed, straight down the line. We make no bones about it. Any candidate that doesn't publicly post their stances and issues, you need to ask them. You can use this as a vetting tool to them. And if they don't post them and they don't answer the questions, find somebody else to vote for. They've got something to hide. They should post their issues, what they're going to stand on right here. This is how you tell, and this is how you can tell that you have elected rhinos into office, because there's something called the GOP platform. And I'm going to ask John Bennett about that tonight, and we're going to go through a couple things and understand that the GOP elected officials aren't doing what they agreed to do, much less their knowledge of the Constitution is sorely lacking. Now, with that said, I want you to download this so that you can keep us in your prayers, first of all, and also use these issues as a vetting tool for other candidates so that we can ensure that America and Oklahoma is number one. We need to make sure we do that. We need to make sure that God is honored, the Constitution is protected, and the people of America and Oklahoma are heard loud and clear. With that said, this app also has our upcoming events, and we've got a lot of events. I'm just going to give you the highlights of a couple, and I'm going to tell you about two things that are coming up just the rest of this week. Tomorrow night, I'll actually be in Enid, Oklahoma at the Garfield County OK2A, 7 o'clock. Friday night, there will be a Beaver County Town Hall meeting, 7 o'clock out in Beaver, Oklahoma. We'll be at the Cimarron Territory celebration all day at the Panhandle on Saturday. Next week, it'll be Grady County on the 21st. Then we'll have a meet and greet in Coweta. And then we'll have the 23rd at Town Hall in Krebs with Senator Warren Hamilton. And a couple things coming up. On May the 7th, this is going to be, I believe, the most important meeting event we've had in Oklahoma state history. Say, what is that? We're bringing Sheriff Richard Mack into Oklahoma. Now, Sheriff Mack is the only sheriff that sued the United States government and won under the Bill Clinton administration, and he is still alive to tell about it. Some of you know what I'm talking about. So Sheriff Mack sued them, and it was under the preservation of the 10th Amendment. He got an affirmative ruling back, and I've got the ruling right here in my hand right now. And you will get that ruling too in your hand if you show up this event on May the 7th in Norman, Oklahoma. Now, on that day, Sheriff Mack will be, with the blessing of the Oklahoma Sheriff's Association, be training all of the sheriffs across the state in Constitution. Now, how many think that the sheriffs, when they become experts in the Constitution, are able to protect and serve the people in the counties they represent? Well, and then we're going to have a big rally that night as well, right there in Norman, Oklahoma, where the OTA is now continuously overstepping bounds. So May 7th, make sure you do that. Another big event coming up, I'll just point out very quickly, on May the 21st, also in Norman, Oklahoma, my personal friend, John Bevere's coming in. We'll be having a campaign fundraising event that night. Looking forward to seeing him, and there's a place to RSVP for all these events, and that's just not all. There's a whole bunch more. So make sure, again, you download the app. Downloading the app is going to keep us in mind for your prayers. And we'll have a bunch of virtual town halls. And I want you to begin to immediately start sharing this video, because I want to bring our guest on just a moment. Make sure that you prepare your questions, and I'll be monitoring the questions right here on my cell phone through Facebook, and we'll feed the questions back to us as we go forward. So please share as you care, because if you don't tell anybody about something, it's not important to you. So make sure you tell everybody. Make sure as well, get your questions ready. Any question that is not asked is a bad question, but any question that's asked is a great question. With that said, I met Chairman of the GOP, Oklahoma Chairman John Bennett, last summer as I showed up at the Capitol to just simply stand with the people of Oklahoma, 5,000 of them, asking the governor to call a special session, to say, let's stop this nonsensical mandate lockdown stuff. Not many senators showed up, I think 2, maybe 3. And a man showed up by the name of John Bennett, the Oklahoma County or Oklahoma State Republican chairman. And I watched him talk to the crowd, and I saw a passion on him, and I saw a mission on him, and I saw something in him that I admired. And we immediately connected. We became fast acquaintances and even faster friends. And I got to know John Bennett as a friend before I knew him in his professional capacity as the Oklahoma State GOP chairman. Now, John is a U.S. Marine, and I've met many Marines in my day. But like I will tell you, and like he would verify, once you're a Marine, you learn to fight for your country. You're always a Marine, and you'll always fight for your country. And that's the way it is. John made a big decision recently. John decided to do more than just represent the state GOP party. John stepped up and decided to run for the United States Congress District 2. Now, that's a seat that was vacated by Markwayne Mullin, who went ahead and challenging the open seat now by the retirement of James Inhofe. So this is a wide open field. John is, again, a friend. He is an Oklahoma first, proud American husband, father, and it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome into the program, the virtual town hall tonight, John Bennett. Welcome, John. Thanks for being here, man.
Dr. Sherwood, thank you for having me on, and thank you for being a friend, and thank you for standing up and doing what you believe is right, what we all believe is right. And standing and fighting for liberty. So thank you for doing that. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, we're in this together, and we talked many, many times about standing up together in this journey as we go forward. And we're more powerful, I think, folks, if we stand together in unity than if we stand apart in disunity. And that's exactly what the enemy wants to do, wants to get us disjointed, disconnected, and really ineffective. Now, John, talk about this a little bit, and I think people might want to know what prompted your decision to jump into the United States Congress District 2 race.
So thank you for asking that, Dr. Sherwood. Great question. After a lot of thought and prayer, I decided to do this. Um, I never thought I would ever be in politics again and didn't really care to. I just wanted to do my part, do the best I can, and then find someone that will do a better job than me to take over for me. And what I found out when I got inside the party is we had a problem. Not only do we have a problem after January 6th when they threw President Trump under the bus, but we had a problem internally. We weren't who we say we were as Republicans. And that's what I was seeing. And the grassroots seemed to be disconnected from the establishment Republicans that were running the party. They didn't have a voice. So I decided to make that change. And we started making a lot of changes, supporting the grassroots and helping them get stronger from the ground up, because it's a ground up organization, or it should be. Problem is it was top down and their voices weren't being heard. So we gained a lot of momentum. We had a lot of great victories. The grassroots are rising and they're strong. And that's exactly where they need to be. But I've realized, and I learned this in my time in the Marine Corps in combat, whoever owns the air owns the battlefield. And I realized we didn't have any air cover at the federal level. So we can have all the successes and win all the battles we want at the grassroots level. But if we didn't have the air cover to protect us from an overreaching federal government, which strengthened the establishment Rhino and the Communist Democrat government at the local level, we couldn't win the whole war. So I decided I need to move on to that position and provide the air cover and protect the state and our citizens from that overreach. So I decided to get in the race.
Well, I like that. And I think I want people to really understand that, because we're talking about a dynamic here, John, where I think people don't fully get it. The federal government has been allowed to become too big. We know that. It's been allowed to reach into our states and infiltrate and control everything we do. It was never intended to do that. We've talked many times in our town halls and personally about the 10th Amendment, meaning these United States, the power is retained by the states and the people unless it's specifically given over. And it's important what you said, and in the analogy of the air cover, you're covering the state from Washington, D.C. At the same time, it's important that you have boots on the ground back in the states to do what they need to do. If you don't have both, you have a problem. Am I drawing that analogy out further from your point of view?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And our founding fathers meant it to be that way all along. They meant for the states to be more powerful than the federal government. And outside of those 18 innumerable powers, the federal government has no business getting into the states' business. The problem is our states have given the power to the federal government to rule over them, even though they don't have any real authority to do so. And part of that problem was, I would go all the way back to the 17th Amendment. In my mind, I would love to see the 17th Amendment repealed, because prior to the 17th Amendment, if anyone's not familiar with 17th Amendment, that's the amendment that allowed the people to vote through popular vote to vote in our U.S. senators. But prior to that, the state legislatures, which are closer to the people and can be controlled by the people in the states, selected those U.S. senators. And if those U.S. senators got out of control or didn't go up there to do their specific job, which was to protect states' rights and protect the states, then those states could recall them at any time. And if the states didn't do it, the state legislators didn't do it, then the people could get rid of the state legislators. That's real power and authority at the local level, at the state level, which leads into the 10th Amendment. And that is what the founding fathers wanted. And we've gotten so far away from that, and they don't even teach it in schools anymore. Very rarely, if at all, you will hear them teach about the true power and the purpose of the 10th Amendment. And that's to keep an overreaching federal government from strong-arming and controlling the states. It's supposed to be the other way around. And if you don't have a governor that knows the Constitution and is willing to stand and fight for the 10th Amendment, or a state legislature or the people, then the federal government does what they've been doing. And they come into our state and they say, you have to allow the murdering of unborn in the womb. You have to allow us to come in. They just passed gun control at the federal level. which comes into the states because now they can come into our state and enforce that. We're starting to see this unfold right in front of our eyes. And it's going to take from the ground up, from the schoolhouse to the courthouse to the state house to the White House, to get principled people in those positions that know and understand the Constitution, that are principled enough to stand and fight, even when the heat gets turned up, or even when they're out there on the island all by themselves, to say, nope, not today. We're going to protect our state. We're going to use the Constitution to do it.
Now you bring up a very good point, and I appreciate the explanation, because a lot of people, they need to hear it from the united front that we just discussed, right? This is important. Now, you have observed this idea. We use the term rhino, Republican in name only, quite often, and it's used in a way that I think people partly understand and mostly don't understand. And you can tell a rhino, and I mentioned earlier in the prelude tonight, the GOP party stance that I keep on my phone. You know it well. I've read every line of it. You saw this happen, John, this erosion away, this lack of following those principles. Two-part question. In your mind, how did that start? The second thing is, how do we fix it?
So those are two really good questions and really big questions. So it's been eroding away for quite some time. The problem is the Republican Party, once they started to gain momentum, they started to, instead of focusing on we the people, they started focusing on the organization of the party. So once they got away from that, they started compromising to stay elected, to move up to different offices, whatever it might be. And they have really forgotten about we the people and started thinking about, how can I self-preserve? How can I get to that next step? And to do that, I have to compromise, and I have to not obey. I have to let these things slide when other Republicans or Democrats or whomever does it, and just give them a pass. That way they will help me in my endeavors. So we've had a lot. And as the Republican Party started to gain control and momentum because of who we say we are and because of our platform, the Democrats realized, hey, all I got to do is change my registration to Republican and I can get elected. And that's what they've done. And then they come into the party and everyone thinks that they're Republican. Oh, they got to be good if they're Republican, but they're still carrying those Democrat values. And there's enough of them in the state legislature and the federal side now today that is actually swaying and so how do we fix that? We've got to get back to our roots. We got to get back to our founding principles, which is our Constitution, biblical values. The Constitution was built off biblical values, the laws of nature and nature's God, as we see in our founding documents. And it was legally defined in Blackstone's commentaries as God's word and God's will. And if we start focusing on that and start focusing on putting the people first and using the platform as a guide, then we can get everything back. But we've got to start pushing out those that don't carry the same values, those that go against the platform of who we say we are, and hold them accountable. Because we haven't held them accountable, they've done everything they wanted to do. And they still think today, well, we can get away with it because the voters are naive. This is what they think, but we're not. We're sick and tired of it, and we're going to stand and we're going to get those people out, and we're going to get the right people in.
Yeah, you bring up a good segue into that, and I appreciate that because in my observation of this erosion over the last several years, I sat back and would complain about it, instead of getting involved and doing something about it. And you're right, there reaches a day where every one of us has hopefully going to reach that place where it says no more. I'm done with that. And I see that happening. I see people stepping up. I see them rising up, and I see them getting involved more and more and more. And I know you have too around the state, which brings me to this idea of the election. You mentioned the January 6th, the election and the subsequent lack of courage to not certify a fraudulent election, and we've talked about that ad nauseum. But, when we vote them out, we're in a crisis time right now. There's still questions about our election integrity. what do we do? What's the answer? The primaries are coming here on June 28th.
So we've got to get out and vote. So a lot of people have lost faith and confidence in the election system because the election was stolen. And just a quick sidebar, nobody is lifting a finger to say stop. No one that's set in an elected position today. There might be a handful at best at the state level that's trying to do something, but they're overwhelmed by the ones that either don't care or they're what I would call controlled opposition. Same thing on the federal level. And when we have a U.S. senator from the state of Oklahoma throw the president under the bus, change his mind in the middle of his speech a couple hours later, and then say, you know what, we're going to certify the election. You might as well just say, yeah, we don't care about the Constitution, the rule of law. We don't care about that. We don't care about evidence. We only care about feelings. So let's throw all of that out. So we have a huge problem. So how do people fix that on election day? We at the state party have an election integrity committee and working on some pretty disturbing things, which once they get all those things, they're going to turn those into the attorney general. So we're working on it. But in the meantime, to make sure that we get the right people in, we got to go vote. We got to go vote on election day, and we got to go vote in person. That will be one of the most simple ways to help stop any further election fraud and give us time, get the right people in office to start turning this whole cabal around for we the people once again. Give us some time. So go in person and vote. Vote on June the 28th. We tend to look past primaries and think, well, we'll get somebody in there. I'll let everyone else vote. We all have to vote. That's the one thing that we can do. If we don't do anything else, go vote for the right people, the right Republicans on June the 28th. And if we do that, and if we turn out more numbers than the establishment rhinos or the communist Democrats, we will win, and we will fix this mess.
I like how you said that. I've told people carpool, rent a bus, rent a van, pick somebody up, and go there in numbers, because this primary that's coming up June 28th is probably the most important critical primary we've ever had in the state to date, because we have got to turn this thing around. And I'm with you, John. I believe that if we show up in numbers, we act in our faith, and we activate our faith, we will win. And we're determining there's a lot of people around the state, as you have exhibited, that have decided to step up and kind of put up or shut up time, and I appreciate that. John, let's kind of fast forward. After you are elected as the United States Congressman in District 2, what are you going to bring to Washington on behalf of the people of your district in Oklahoma?
So, of course, I'm in District 2, and there's 5 congressional districts in the state. But I want to make this very clear. Liberty does not have boundaries. So when I go to Washington, D.C., not only will it be for District 2, it will be for all the other districts as well. I'm going to go up there. I'm going to bring the fight for liberty to the halls of Congress, and we're going to start holding people accountable and getting things done. I'm going to do what the U.S. senators were supposed to be doing and what they're charged to do, which is stand up for states' rights and our people in Oklahoma. See, a lot of folks, they say, well, I measure my success on the number of bills that I'll file. I could care less about filing a bill and trying to get a law put into place. We have enough laws. What we need to do is start holding people accountable, getting rid of the bad laws, maybe like repeal the part of the omnibus bill that former Vice President Biden just signed into law on March the 15th, which had gun control in it. And we can talk about that later if you want to, but it's gun control. And we had Republicans vote for it. Those are the kind of things I'm going to do, taking the fight to Congress, and we're going to get some things done. And there's probably about a dozen up there right now that are trying and fighting to do the best they can, and they need help. And we have a chance in Oklahoma. We have all 7 of the federal delegation on the ballot. Unheard of, it's making history. Mm-hmm. If we send the right 7 people up there, imagine the things a delegation from the state of Oklahoma can get done for the people of Oklahoma and for the people in the United States. Because when you have bold leadership, it inspires other people. And that's what we need. We don't need politics as usual. What we need are warriors and fighters that are principled that will go there and say, we're going to make a change. This is how we're going to do it. You either follow me, get beside me, or get out of my way, because it's coming.
I appreciate what you said. It is unique in this time. We have all 7 spots up for grab. That's unique. Is I don't know if it's happened. I can't remember the last time, but here we are right now. Folks, listen, if we show up and vote for the right 7 representatives, we have the right governor, and then we have the people's voice speaking. I realize some of the legislatures are not up for grab, but there's some rhinos in there. I think John Bennett will verify this. When the people's voice gets loud enough and they have the proper representation and support from the executive branch and even the federal representative branch, I'm telling you, at that point, it's going to squeeze those legislatures so tight. The ones that don't want to cooperate are going to have to cooperate, because they're, just as they waver to get in there, they're going to waver to keep their jobs. And keeping their jobs is going to be passing the right bills and allowing the right bills to be heard. And then finally, I will sign those bills into law, and we will have the representation that we need that's going to cross, from the state house to the White House, as John Bennett said. Now, John, talk about, you brought up something that was part of my notes here, the omnibus and the attack on the Second Amendment. Speak to that.
So they passed an omnibus bill. It was a funding bill to keep the government going. So they slid inside of that omnibus bill a little portion. They tried to run it by itself before, and it had failed. And they called it Violence Against Women's Act. You always got to read between the lines, especially when you're dealing with these folks in Washington. It had nothing about protecting women from violence in it. What it was gun control. And what it was basically is, if any of you all go to buy a gun from a federal firearms dealer, they're going to run you through the NICS check, which is checking your background. If you get delayed for any reason whatsoever, then this law says that the local law enforcement has to come to your house, do an interview with you, find out how many guns you have, why you have them, and they can discern if they think you're dangerous or not, and they have the ability to confiscate your weapons and even detain you. There's so many things wrong with that. One, it's unconstitutional. It's completely against the law. There's no due process in it whatsoever. So they're chipping away at the one thing that's keeping a communist government from completely overwhelming us at the state level. And if you don't have the right governor in place or the right legislature in place to push back on a federal government, especially in a case like this, it's a perfect example, then we're going to be overrun by a federal overreaching government that is going to turn us into a dictatorship. And that, as they say in Texas, Houston, we have a problem. And we had 2 Oklahoma Congress people vote for it, Congressman Bice, and I believe it was Congressman Cole.
Yep.
But I didn't hear anybody else standing up against it, or I didn't see any debate against it on the House floor from an Oklahoma delegation. That's got to change. And I'll tell you this much, they won't mistake nothing by me like that.
No.
It's just like when I was in the state house, if I couldn't read a bill, I don't care how good it was, I voted no. I voted no so many times in the legislature on April Fool's Day. Somebody come in, there's buttons on your desk, yes, no, and a request to speak. They took a red button that had white letters on top that said panic, and they glued it on top of my green button. But you know what? That's the way you can't legislate unless you know what you're legislating, because you're representing the people. And if we don't have good people in office from the local to the highest level, we're going to see these things happen. I mean, just recently in your Oklahoma Republican-controlled legislature, they heard a bill that would get the state Senate passed it. It's in the state House right now. It failed in the Judiciary Committee, and it was a bill to allow illegal immigrants to get a driver's license in Oklahoma. And guess what? They're trying to revive the bill right now. They moved it over to the Rules Committee. Yep. So let me ask you this. If you think the governor's not important or the legislature's not important, you're wrong. They check and balance each other. Let's say in this instance, if the House and the Senate pass this on to the governor, We got to have a governor that's going to do the right thing, not listen to the state chamber, not listen to any other lobbyist groups or anybody else, and say, you know what, we can't have this in Oklahoma, and veto that bill. It will be signed into law. So that's why we need people that are principled, like you, Dr. Sherwood, is going to say, I might be on an island here, but I'm vetoing this thing.
No, we've talked about that island analogy many times. And I want to point out pieces of information that people might not be aware of. To your point a moment ago about the gun control slid into covertly the omnibus bill, because they do it all the time. They give these big bills. In my observation, they have really cool titles, but if you don't read them, the proper response that you want your legislature to do is to say no until they read it. I mean, that's a great principal point there. But this goes back to the core issue of what we're bringing in Sheriff Mack to do, because Sheriff Mack, back in the Clinton administration, they passed the Brady bill. Same kind of concept where they wanted the local authorities to kind of act as their agents. The local authorities, most of them didn't know any better. They had no idea. They did it, and they thought they had to do the biddings of the federal government. Sheriff Mack pushed back. Him and 7 other sheriffs, that's all there was. 7. Are you seeing the coincidence, ladies and gentlemen? 7 pushed back and said, no, we don't believe that we need to follow those unconstitutional guidelines or laws. And they pushed back and they won. Hence, they're trying to come back at the same idea again, the same deal. Background checks for firearm purchases. History always repeats itself, doesn't it, John?
Yeah, and Biden right now, he's trying to use executive orders, and the Republican-controlled legislature should hammer him on that. You can't pass a law through executive orders, especially one that clearly goes against our Second Amendment. They said, well, for safety, we're trying to do away with the loophole for ghost guns. I don't care what the excuse is. You can't do it.
No.
The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And that's the only thing keeping them from completely overrunning us right now.
It is. And the Second Amendment, as we've known, friends, is necessary, absolutely critical to preserving the First Amendment, which are our rights to just kind of speak freely like we are. You know, the speech and the religion and the peaceably assembling, and how we saw those abused and sort of manipulated over the course of time. Just remind you all to go ahead and get your questions ready. I am monitoring the feed right now in the live stream right now, and there's all several questions on here right now, which is awesome. So keep those coming, and we'll be feeding them here to second to Representative, soon to be Congressman Bill. So I think that's important. The idea of those bills, I want to talk about that, because you bring a very good point. You have to read them. Even in Oklahoma, we've had a couple of really shiny sounding bills, you know, the Protection of Women's Sports Act, and then the most recent one, this one that's supposedly going to stop abortion. But I will tell you, if you read those bills, and that's going to be Senate Bill 2, I believe, Senate Bill 612, there's holes, there's loopholes. And John, that's what people like yourself are designed to pick up on when you have these sessions, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. And I'll tell you this, a great majority, I know because I was in the state legislature, they don't read the bills. You know what they do? They vote the same way their buddies do. They vote the same way that whoever is writing them campaign checks votes, and they try to keep everyone happy. The lobbyists come in there. I mean, you name it, whomever they are, and like, we want you to vote yes on this bill. It's a good bill. Trust us. And they'll go do it. Very, very few people actually set up at night. I could tell you, literally name off the ones that I know for a fact do. And those will be the ones that have the red vote 99% of the time on the board, because these bills typically are not good for Oklahoma. You know, they changed the words around on Women's Protection Act. It's not protecting women. It's actually hurting women and endangering women. But yet, when you hear the title, you think, oh, well, that's a great bill. My constituents will love it. Well, how do you know what's in it if you don't read it? Mm-hmm. And it's a violation of their constitutional oath, and it's a violation of their promise to we the people by not reading them. And they need to be replaced.
They do. I was down at the Capitol today, a little bit later than you were, and we were officially filing for office. But I went up to Senator Hamilton's office and today, and I was just there probably a half an hour. That's it. And within the half an hour, 2 lobbyists came in and dropped down flyers for whining and dining events. I saw that and I was like, that is sad. And I asked the executive assistant, what is that? And she said, well, that happens every day. Every day. Somebody's always trying to literally lobby or bribe their way in. So I want people to understand what John just said. You heard it. I saw it from a snippet. He saw it over the years. We need to pay attention, and we need to elect men like John Bennett who will do what they say they'll do. Now, John, your website, I want to make sure people have this. We're going to put this in the feed. Your official website is johnbennettforcongress.com. And it's John Bennett, spelling F-O-R, or the number 4, you said. So I thought that was brilliant in both. We're going to put that in the feed. And folks, I'm going to encourage you right now to donate and pray. Donate, pray, and get involved. You think someone call it your time, talent, and treasure. I'm just saying donate, pray, and get involved. Get involved, because if you don't get involved, you're going to find out that freedom was always a spectator sport, or a participatory sport, not a spectator sport. And then John has a Facebook page, John Bennett for Congress. You want to go there, like that, share that, so we can expand the influence, because that's what the purposes of these virtual town halls are. You know, I mean, we don't just do these things. We're actually out there talking to people too. But look, we work hard, don't we, John? It's not an easy task with a statewide race traveling all the time. You've been all over the place, haven't you?
I have. And you know what? I don't mind. I love talking to the people and seeing what's in their minds. And that's one of the biggest problems we have with all people running for that are in office or even running for office. They get so disconnected from the people. And we can't have that. They get disconnected from our founding. They get disconnected from who we are, who we say we are as Americans, and what we believe in and should be fighting for. And they get disconnected from the people. And it happens at the state level too. They get up there, and the lobbyists you were just talking about and everyone else, they put them up on a pedestal and say, you guys are like kings, and they treat them that way. They start to actually believe it, and they get disconnected from their people. And when that happens, they make bad decisions, and then they get bills passed, like we just saw that was passed. And that's a problem. We got to get back to accountability, and we the people.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said about receiving the accolades and then begin to believe them. When I was on the power team years and years ago, the founder, Don Jacobs, sat me down one day, and we were filling up the arenas of 10,000 people 5 nights in a row. And he sat me down one day, and he rarely talked to me in those days, but he did. And he said, listen here, Mark. He said, you can do anything you want. You're a smart guy. You can achieve anything you want. Nobody's going to work harder. But I want you to hear me right now. He said, if you start believing your bio, you're going to fall, and it's going to be a hard one. And it stuck with me. You know, that's some powerful words. And what you said, John, is exactly what is happening. I'm observing a lot of the politicians losing complete touch of the people, gaining fame, money, power. And I think that's a real temptation from a real core emotional and physical and spiritual realm as there is. And that's a real temptation, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why, and I can't say this enough. You got to send principled fighters to whatever office it is. You've got to send them there, because when the heat gets turned up, the incentives get turned up. You got to have someone that is grounded in principle. And that principle has to be in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, first and foremost. And if it's not, they will falter and they will fail. And that's not what we need. And I got to tell a quick story off on you, Dr. Sherwood, if that's all right. I remember as a kid going and watching the power team. I was just a little fella, and I'm like, that is so amazing. I was so inspired by the power team. And if you all don't know what the power team was, just, I guess, in general terms, They were a Christian organization. They did some amazing feats by lifting weights, ripping phone books. Dr. Sherwood rips a phone book in half, which is amazing still to me today. And then they would work in scripture and work in, how Jesus has impacted their lives. And it just had such an impact on me. And I remember going home and trying to convince my parents to buy me a weight bench, which they did not. But I'm like, I got to get them guns up like the power team, because I need to be a strong warrior for Christ. So thank you for being that positive influence and that strong warrior for Christ then and today.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm humbled by that. It was a great ministry, great time. And John, you mentioned something key that I want to really dive into right now, is the necessity to be grounded in Christ. And this is not pushing religion or relationships on anybody. This is saying the necessity of being rooted and grounded in Christ, to have that inside you and with you, stepping into positions like we are both doing. Why that's critical and why that's important. Speak to that.
We can't do it on our own because we will fail. We have to have something stronger to prop us up and keep us where we need to be. And that moral standard and that strength only comes from Jesus Christ. Whether people believe it or not, it's a fact. And we all will learn it one day if we haven't learned it already. But that is what keeps us grounded and keeps us where we need to be. And that's what the people need and deserve, because that's the way God wants it to be. We all need to understand that. And this great nation was built upon that moral standard. And the farther away we get from it, the more evil we're going to see, and the more we've been blessed for so long. We expect the blessing without giving the thankfulness to the one that gave it to us in the first place. And if they chip away the foundation of this nation, it's going to crumble and fall, or it's going to be replaced with something, and that something will be evil. And if we want to continue to be a blessed nation, we've got to continue to go back to the source of that blessing, and that source is only found in Jesus.
Amen. I appreciate that. Hey, John, there's a bunch of questions here, and I'm just going to start from the beginning and go down, and then we'll both tackle. I want to give you the first bite of the apple, man. All right, so here we go. Roberta asked, are you willing to do anything to downsize the government? If so, what?
Absolutely. What we need to do is go in there. The federal government they have like an unlimited checkbook. They shouldn't have an unlimited checkbook. We should have budget limitations. And because they don't have those limitations, we have over $31 trillion in debt right now. That's a national security issue. That's a huge problem for all of us. Inflation's over 8.5% right now. We're going to collapse eventually. You can't keep printing money off without something to back that up. So one thing to shrink government is we need to go in and we should start consolidating things. There's so much spillover from agencies into other things. We have agencies like the Department of Education. They should be completely disbanded. All that money, it should go down to the states and probably block grants or some other way and completely take the federal government out of it. We need to downsize federal government. We need to cut out all that excess spending, and we need to hold people accountable. And right now, they're just writing checks, and they have no idea how to back them up. And because of that, it's only a matter of time before we completely collapse our own economy. But we've got to start with the government first, the ones that are in charge, and start shrinking them first. And then we can start correcting everything else.
That's right. And I keep seeing, legislatures voting in their pay raises every year while everybody's struggling. And that's the same principle you're talking about. As we work down from the feds, we want to get down to state government, and you got to shrink state government too, folks. You got to shrink them both so that people's voice is bigger. We, the people, and John is part of the we. I'm part of the we. This is not about me. This is not about John. This is we. We want to be represented well. I mean, we are Oklahomans first. We really are. I mean, we're actually, God's people first, but we're Oklahomans second. Let's put it like that in that spiritual sense. Okay, so here's another one, and I think this is a good one. What's your feeling? This is from Roberta again. What's your feeling, John, on term limits?
There should be term limits. I actually signed a pledge. I don't remember who it was sent it to me. It was an organization that sent it to me. And I signed a pledge saying I would support a bill or a resolution that would put term limits on federal office. The fact that people are sitting in a government office for 20, 30, 40, 50 years is ridiculous. They need to go in there. I mean, and I'm not just saying this because I'm running for office to get everyone's vote. I actually did it, and I have a proven track record, and everything I'm saying we should do, I've done. When I was in the state legislature, I did 8 years, and I term limited myself out. I recruited a constitutional Christian patriot to take my place and helped him get elected, and then I left and went back to my church and started pastoring my church. I was done. I thought I was done with politics, but we should have term limits. It's ridiculous. We always should think, well, I'm going to do the best I can and work as hard as I can to do what's best for the nation and people I represent, and then find someone that's going to come in and do a better job than I did. And then they should do the same. And there should be limits to that as far as time goes.
Yeah, I signed the same pledge, folks, and I don't remember the organization, but it was like you sign it and they, put your name on that certificate. I did that because of the same reasons John said, and I echo that. I also echo John's idea because I've had a couple of the persons when I've been out say, hey, if we find somebody good, we want to hang on to them. But the answer behind, I get that, and I think John gets that too, but the answer behind that is to grasp the idea that a leader is only as good as those that he's willing to mentor to make better. And that's true leadership. And that's what John Bennett was talking about. Okay. So, good question. Thank you, Roberta. Another one. This is a good one. We'll go ahead and go here. All right. This is from Ryan. Which one, if any, of the current Republican Oklahoma congressmen are you willing to work with and why?
The current ones? Oh boy.
That's a good question, right?
I guess that is a good one. So I guess I'll say this. I will negotiate and work with anybody, but I will never compromise my principles. So I will work with my fellow congressmen to push our agenda forward if it's good for us, the people. If it's not, I have no desire to work with them, because if they won't work with me to do what's right for the people, then they're not deserving to be worked with, because they don't have good intentions for the people. And those people I'm talking about is all of you all, plus my wife, my children. That's what's in my mind, not what some lobbyist or what some self-interest group wants. So, I'll work with any of them, but I won't compromise my principles. And if they're not willing to do what's right for the people, then I won't work with them.
I echo that. Anybody, I don't care if they've got an R or a D or an I or nothing L behind them. It matters not. As long as there's a communication and people are willing to listen and work together, there's always potential for common ground solutions and better understanding. But the Bible says clearly, if someone's not willing to listen, it is foolishness to argue with a fool. So sometimes you got to learn to love people from a distance and don't waste time. And I think that's what you're talking about. Here's a good one. It's a hot issue in the state right now. This is from David. What kind of relationship should we have with the tribes? And what, in your opinion, should be done about the current situation?
So right now, that's a great question. It's asked, a lot of people are wondering this right now. The whole McGirt decision has thrown the state of Oklahoma and other states into a huge tailspin, because law enforcement's confused, the DAs are confused. There's fighting between the governor and the tribes right now. So really the only people that are hurting are tribal members and non-tribal members. But the governments that are not working this out is the problem. So this needs to be fixed at the federal level, because the McGirt decision came around because I believe it was the Creek Nation, the federal government, the Congress never discontinued the agreement or the compact that they had, and they never dissolved that compact they had with the Creek Nation. but they went about business. They did everyone else's, all the other tribes, and they went about business as usual, but they never fixed it legally through legislation. And fast forward to today, and that's why we're in the predicament we're at today. And then it just bloomed from there. It was only supposed to involve the Major Crimes Act, so murder, assault with a deadly weapon, felonious assault, or things like that. But now, because of the court's decision, it's gone all the way down to, oh, wait, you can't pull so-and-so over because they have a tribal tag, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. And it's a problem, and it can only be fixed by the United States Congress. Now, the governor plays a huge and important role because of the compacts. But until the federal delegation goes in and revisits that and actually passes legislation to roll that treaty back, we're going to have the same issue. We've opened it up to allow the courts to determine what happens, and that's a bad place to be. But the governor of the state plays a major role in that because he's having to deal with the tribes at the state level. So there's got to be some compromise to an extent, and there's got to be some openness to talk and communicate and fix what's going on to the best of their ability, and then urge government to do their job is what they need to do. If I'm elected, I will work on that as a priority because it's hurting all Oklahomans right now. We need to get it fixed.
And I'll kind of take a different angle on that one, but the same issue. The problem will never be solved the way it is now with the lack of communication and the backbiting and fighting. It won't work. And I am disturbed by the current state of the relationship between the governor and the tribes. It's not going to work. You've broken a relationship now so severely because of whatever's going on, and now we have to do something different. And for the people that are listening, all I know is we've got to fix it. And the best way I know how to fix it is to sit down with the tribes right now. And I've already started to build bridges there. I talked to a particular chief today who happened to be a Democrat. I've talked to probably 9 or 10, John, of the 39 already, and every one of them, I mean, that I've talked to so far, and again, it's not all, but every one of them said, hey, we just want to work together and figure this thing out. We're just as overwhelmed as you are. Let's figure it out, and let's figure out how to deal with the law enforcement issue, to deal with these confusing areas. And I had the experience to do that being former law enforcement. I was back there working on the street when the casinos came in, and that was confusing as heck. But I remember the cross deputization, the cross training, the equipping, the different ways we were dealing with that. And I learned a lot. So when you have a problem like this, there's only one way to fix it. It's communication. And the opportunity at hand here for us is to make it better than it has ever been. And that's the good ways America can look at it. We've always overcame, John, and I think this is another opportunity for us to do something incredibly special in this state. And we got to work cut out for us, but nonetheless, I think we can do something really cool. So appreciate your work on that. Here's one from Brandy. The First Amendment rights are under attack from cancel culture. What will we do, for both of us, I'll start with you, John, to protect our right to free speech?
Well, I'd say the first time that they say they trample on our First Amendment rights, we just go throat punch them. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, but at the same time, what I mean by that is we've got to take a stand. Right now, Elon Musk, thank the Lord, he's actually doing something. He's a major shareholder in Twitter now, and the people that started Twitter to be a free speech platform is mad that he's turning it back into a free speech platform. And this goes back really to our legislators have they have a huge platform. And have you really heard of any of them standing up and saying, hey, we've got a problem in America, free speech is under attack. This needs to stop immediately. And in the U.S. Congress and in the state house, you have what they call the power of the purse. So when it comes to constitutional rights, these things shouldn't be allowed for them to strip those away from us or or say, well, you can't do this, or you can exercise your First Amendment if you do it in this manner. There's no caveats to it. It's very clear in our Constitution. A third grader could read it and understand it. What we need is our elected officials that have a platform and the power of the purse and other levers to say, no, we're not doing that. You either abide by the First Amendment or you don't. And if you don't, you're going to see these repercussions. You decide. But we are not going to let you trample on our First, Second, or any of the other amendments that are guaranteed to all citizens of the United States of America. We're just not going to do it.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments. I go back to the springtime and early summer and on from 2020. Our First Amendments were being violated. You can't speak up. You know, we saw you being banned or banished or relinquished your Facebook rights for speaking up. We saw lockdowns and mandates right here in Oklahoma. As your next governor, I can tell you this, there won't be any more of those lockdowns or mandates. It won't happen. And if I were governor of them, it would never have happened because it's important. And we've mentioned this as a theme a couple of times, and I want to make sure that we hammer this point home. And John, I want you to chime in with this statement. There's nothing worse than a politician who does not know the Constitution, compounded by a politician who claims to be a God-fearing person and a Christian who doesn't know the Bible. You have this double whammy there. John, comment on the problems that can happen when a person is not well grounded in both of those things combined.
Well, they make the wrong decisions is what they do. And as always, especially in the political realm, when they don't know what they're talking about or they don't have any real grounding in either one of the things you just talked about, they're going to make the wrong decision. It's always bad for us. And we need, again, like I say, we need principled, bold leaders in office. I pastor a church north of Muldrow, and whenever they're shutting down all the churches, I told my congregation, I'm like, listen, this church ain't shutting down. If you want to wear a mask, fine, wear one. I don't care. I'm not wearing one, and I'm not making anybody else wear one. The doors will be open. If you want to stand 6 feet apart from someone, fine, have at it. But stand in the back, let everybody else sit in the seats. It's your choice. We're not shutting it down. And I was asked in church, like, well, what are you going to do if the sheriff comes out here? I said, well, if he arrests me, fine. I'll ask my assistant pastor to get up and start preaching. But we're not shutting this thing down. We, of all people, should be the shining city on the hill because that's what we're supposed to be. We're covered by the blood, and we have that full authority, and God doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. And we've got to stand on that. And when you got politicians in office that don't understand that or our founding principles and what they should be fighting for, then they need to go. You know, a strong man stands up for himself, but a stronger man will stand up for others. And we don't have that right now.
Well, we will, and we will, and we will when we elect the 7 right ones and we get the federal government representation in the House, because when you show up in the federal government, in the House of Representatives, John, it doesn't matter how much darkness is around you. The light of God that's within you will make darkness run away. And that's going to happen. The same thing's going to happen in Oklahoma. As your next governor, my fellow Oklahomans, we're going to shine the light on that darkness. And we're not going to be oblivious to the darkness. We're going to be aware of it, but we're not going to let that stress us out because we're going to work forward to shine the light. A couple things here just to comment wise, and then turn it over to you for a little final word, and then I'll wrap it up, John. This has been really good, by the way. Thank you. Just again, folks, I want you to go to johnbennettforcongress.com as his website. Support, share, pray, get involved. Also, his Facebook is John Bennett for Congress. Go there and again, share it around. Share the love. All I can tell you, and make sure that you share our app. One more question, and this is a good question for you, actually, John. What about proxy voting? Are you going to get rid of it, or do you oppose that, or are you for that?
So I'm not clear on the question. You mean proxy voting in the U.S. Congress, or are you talking about in this, like the state party, or?
I think they're just kind of around the idea of voting by proxy, maybe you not being there.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you're talking about voting on bills, it's very important. Unless there's some kind of family emergency or something that prevents you from being there, you should be there and vote, especially on these very important bills like the omnibus bill. There were some senators that missed in the state Senate that missed the vote on the driver's licenses for illegals. They missed that vote. And you got to wonder, okay, did they legitimately miss a vote, or did they walk that vote? You got to ask the question, and you got to see where they're at, because the little secret, most of you may not know, a lot of these guys, because they ride the fence so much, they don't want to make their constituency mad, but they don't want to make the lobbyists or whoever's pushing the bill mad. They do a thing called walk the vote. They leave and don't vote, and then they tell their constituents, "Oh, well, I missed that vote. I wasn't there." Well, yeah, because you just walked out. But just keep that in mind. So, yeah, if you're voting, you should. If you're representing people, you should be there to vote, unless it's some kind of legitimate reason that you can't be.
Yeah, that's a game that people do. There's no question, and I think that's sad. John, in your final thoughts, 30 seconds, give or take. I just want to thank you for the evening and give you your final word before I say goodbye to everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Sherwood. And I will say this to everybody, and I mean this with all sincerity. The time is now. You're here for such a time as this for a reason. You got to get engaged. You got to start fighting for righteousness in this republic. Because if we don't stand and fight for freedom today, we won't have any freedoms to fight for tomorrow. And if you don't want to be on the front lines, fine. We will be your champion. We just ask you to just support us, get behind us, let us fight the fight, let us be your champion, and we'll get it done. And we'll put freedom back on the offensive where it belongs, because that is what God wants us to have. He's given it to us through his son, Jesus Christ, and that's what we, the people, deserve to live in the freest nation on the planet. And I would encourage you all, I appreciate all your kind words tonight, Dr. Sherwood. I support you. I thank you. I encourage all the people that are watching today to support you. You're a man of principle and a man who you are, who you say you are. And I encourage people to get behind you and get you where you need to be.
Well, I appreciate that, John. And we're in this together. And folks, this is the idea that we can bond together. We have an Oklahoma First ticket, if you will, Oklahoma First principles that are going to generate America First outcomes. Remember, you can't see America first until you fix your backyard first. So you want to kind of have both running together. And this is what we have. We've been so fortunate to work together. And I've been so blessed to get to know John Bennett. And boy, you can't go wrong with a man like that. And again, we'll put John Bennett's website on here and make sure that you support. And again, just by way of closing, I'll monitor the feed here for a little bit, and our team will as well. And any more questions you got coming, and we'll do our best to answer them. Get our app, find out what's coming next. Remember the big event on May 7th in Norman. Make sure you get there. Get a hold of your county sheriff. He doesn't know about it. Sheriff Devereaux has made it possible for they're getting continuing education hours for that, which is pretty cool. So it's not just going to a seminar, not getting any credit. They're going to get the hours they have to maintain their law enforcement certification. So again, make sure you get your sheriff there. It's open to the public as well. Get there, learn the Constitution. May the 7th, Norman, Oklahoma. A couple of the next events coming up just right around the corner. Again, tomorrow night, if you live near Enid, Oklahoma, anywhere in the Garfield County area, we'll see you at 7 o'clock at 202 West Walnut, the OK2A meeting up there. And then if you live out in Beaver, Oklahoma, get out there. And I can't wait to see you at the town hall Friday night. And then I'll be over in Comanche County on Monday. So look forward to that. And just want to thank you all for joining us tonight on this virtual town hall. It is a pleasure and an honor that you would take your time this evening to join us here. And with that said, echoing what John said, we cannot do this if we don't get in the game. We cannot continue to seek change if we're going to sit on the sideline and just complain about needed change. We have to get in the game. We have to be willing to do that. And if you're not called to step out and lead the way, it's okay. You've got leaders here that will do it. But we're going to go in the door first. We're going to lead the way. And all we're asking is you to get on board with us. So make sure that you go to the app, download. Our website is Sherwood2022.com. As you know, if you're supposed to give financially and of your time, you need to do that. Not one dime more or less than you're supposed to, and not 1 minute more or less than you're supposed to, according to God's direction. He will provide, and he uses you and I together to provide the need as we go forward together. The mission of freedom is good ground. Sow seed of your time and your funds and your efforts into good ground, and you'll get great results. Our children are up for grabs right now. Our future is in question, and our legacy is in doubt. We have to fight for our freedom now, folks, and we do that together. With that said, on behalf of myself and my wonderful queen, Dr. Michelle, who's always in my heart and in my life, and as you know, she's not my prime rib, or she's not my spare rib only, she's my prime rib. So there you go, use that, men. And I can't wait to see you next time on our next event, in person or live. And John, you can use the prime rib comment yourself, so I love it. All right, so
I just did.
I love it. So, folks, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us tonight. From John and myself, we love you very much. We appreciate your support. Keep us in your prayers, and we will represent you well as God helps us. We'll see you later. Good night.
We have up is down, left is right, bad is good, confusion. And God is not the author of confusion.
God wants to bless America, but it starts with his people first, repenting and the ending of sin.
We have been in ministry the last 20 years. It was in prayer that the Lord began to convict me to run for office. And so I'm excited about Dr. Sherwood stepping up to the plate.
This is a man after God's own heart, who will not compromise with the devil.
He's bold, he's courageous.
I'm Nick Vujicic.
Warren Hamilton.
I'm Jake Merrick,
And I endorse
Enthusiastically,
Dr. Mark Sherwood
as governor of Oklahoma.
The ending of slavery happened with total abolishing of it. We must see this as well for abortion. It's America's Holocaust.
We still have abortions in Oklahoma. How can you be pro-life and have one abortion? Why not stop it right now? And I make a commitment right now that I'm going to do everything I can to completely abolish abortion in the state of Oklahoma within the first 30 days of office.
vaccine mandates that are being rolled out right now are entirely unconstitutional and unbiblical. Every state that's a member of these United States, that's a member of our union, said we'll abide by the Constitution. That's why we don't tinker with it too much.
So I believe the word mandate doesn't equate to law. I am a big believer in the 10th Amendment, and that means state sovereignty. I would propose that every single business owner in Oklahoma that's affected by that ridiculous mandate push back and say no, because they don't own you. The federal government does not own you. We need to own that amendment, understand what it is, and not be afraid to push back.
We have to understand where critical race theory came from. Obviously, it comes from the Marxist handbook. And if we preach this and promote this, we end up a Marxist nation. It is not social justice. It is not anti-racism. It's actually racism in its purest form. The very thing Martin Luther King Jr. talked about, we're not going to allow this to be taught where we judge by the color of our skin.
There's one race. It's called the human race. I'm not going to apologize for being white. I'm not even white. I don't even know what I am. Kids in school need to be taught how to live life. Right now, we're teaching them theories about how to hate. That's not education, that's brainwashing. We will not do that under my administration. We will fine every school that does that. And if they don't like it, they can take their education and find another state that will accept that nonsense. People all need to be healed. Our state needs to be healed, our land needs to be healed, the economy needs to be healed, and our confidence needs to be healed. Our hope needs to be restored. God has gifted us as healers. We know that we're called to not just heal people individually like we do, but we know now we're called to heal a group of people called the state of Oklahoma. My name is Mark Sherwood, and I'm running for governor of the state of Oklahoma.